Hi, everybody. Welcome to class this week. I'm sorry it's taken me a little while before I've recorded something here. I had a very, very busy schedule in 4 weeks going to just a quick trip to Toronto and then to Hong Kong, Singapore, and then 4 times to Japan. This is the final fourth. I'm just here in Osaka. Had some wonderful visits to one of my favorite places in the world, Koyasan, which is it's been really, really pleasant, amazing. So yeah, I've just been very busy as always. I have to sort of gauge how much I can record something like this and teach something that's depending on just how jet lagged I am. And so, in particular, the flight from Singapore to Vancouver, doing that, and then immediately going back to Japan twice within a few days, really, really bowled me over. So I've got a little bit more rest this time, which is good. So I can do a class here now. So anyhow, let's get started. I'm just going to take off my famous watch here and well, I keep an eye on the time here. So this is just to continue our class on essence of true eloquence from Je Tsongkhapa, and we're just going to be exploring some of the themes. I'm going to go through the Asian Classics Institute course notes. Beginning right now, we just did kind of like a little bit of a review of Je Tsongkhapa's life, and we'll go through just some of the notes here on the class, and I'll give a little bit of commentary sort of before we finish the course. This is just going to be very much a very cursory introduction to Je Tsongkhapa's, which is what's seen as possibly his masterwork, or at least one of them. He's the Lam Rim General is very, very good too. So let's just start here with our Guru Yoga practice of Gandala Gema. So we can just take a moment again to visualize ourselves in a wide open space, ground like soft lapis lazuli, beautiful blue sky above us, and surrounded by all sentient beings. Mother on our left, Father on our right, people we love the most behind us to support, and people we like the least in front of us as objects of compassion. And all other sentient beings in the six realms are here as well. You can think humans from all over the world, animals, spirit beings, celestial beings like gods and demigods, and countless beings from lower realms like hell and hungry ghost realms. And think of all people suffering in the world now because of wars and conflict and all the sort of terrible things, environmental problems, exploitation, slavery, and gross injustice. We can think of all those people and bring them here in our hearts, sort of connect up with them and send them this healing, loving energy. So in the sky above us here, we can just visualize that we're sort of interfacing, which is like a big moon coming down to the earth here. We have a vision of Tashita Pure Land. Beautiful, beautiful natural environment. Has lakes and forests and mountains and so forth. And the little town we see here with all the temples and monastic universities, shrines and so forth. Populated by Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, gods, goddesses, monks, nuns, yogis, yoginis, and so forth, everybody here. All Arya beings. Particularly in the main temple, we see the future Buddha, Buddha of loving kindness, fifth universal Buddha, Maitreya. On his right or our left, Atisha, founder of the Old Kadampa school. And on our right, or Maitreya's left, is Je Tsongkhapa, founder of our school. So just to represent the new Kadampa lineage here. And again, Maitreya is very, very beautiful. The golden body seated in a chair with a crown, beautiful silks and jewelry and so forth. His hands and turning the wheel of mudra, turning the wheel of Dharma mudra, holding two white lotuses that blossom around the ears there. Now, at his heart is a golden eternal knot made out of energy, which starts to become a beautiful cluster of white clouds. And on the white clouds, We can visualize now Je Tsongkhapa again with his two art students, Chapa Gyatso Kedrupje. Wearing three robes of a monk and yellow pandits hats. So Je Tsongkhapa is, of course, in his regular way. We always see him in lotus position with the turning the wheel of Dharma Mudra, holding two white lotuses, one with the Prajnaparamita text and one with the flaming sword. And Chapa Gyatso and Kedrupje both have the teaching mudra like this, and then holding a text, Dharma text, in their left hand. And today we can visualize a Je Tsongkhapa's heart on a beautiful lotus and moon disc, Buddha wisdom Manjushri, and he's in lotus position, golden energy body and silks and a crown, holding a flaming double-edged sword in his right hand held over his head with the subduing mudra. And then left hand with the three jewels mudra, we can just feel that he has a white lotus, that's it. And the white lotus is holding the Prajnaparamita text in 100,000 lines above his left shoulder there. So taking refuge here, I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I attain enlightenment. By the merit accumulated from practicing generosity of the perfections, may I attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha to attain enlightenment. By the merit accumulated from practicing generosity of the perfections, may I attain enlightenment in order to benefit of all sentient beings. I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha to attain enlightenment. By the merit accumulated from practicing generosity of the perfections, may I attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. So I'm just taking refuge at our heart in the three jewels. Now generating bodhicitta is our intention. Let's just really generate feeling that everything we do may be cause for the enlightenment of all sentient beings. May we become Buddha in order to lead all sentient beings to that same state. May all beings have happiness and its causes. May all beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings constantly dwell in joy, transcending sorrow. May all beings dwell in equal love for both those close and distant. So getting the four measurables, generating love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So again, wanting all beings to be happy, not wanting them to suffer, wanting them sort of to have that pure affirmative joy of nirvana, and the equanimity of not being sort of caught between the two extremes of anger and attachment, but sort of being a balanced, grounded, open, and friendly person to all. Now, when we do the invocation here, just feel that the carpet of clouds kind of like rolls out like a yoga mat to bring Je Tsongkhapa and his two students closer. So we have them just coming right, just directly above us and in front of us here. So sort of giving us blessing of their presence. From the heart of the protected hundreds of deities of the joyful land to the pleak of a cloud is like a cluster of fresh white curd. All-knowing Lo Tsongkhapa, king of the Dharma, please come to this place together with the chief disciples. In the space before me in lion throne, lotus and moon, the venerable Guru smiled with delight. Supreme field of merit from my mind of faith, please for me for 100 aeons to spread the teachings. Your minds of wisdom realize the full extent of objects of knowledge. Your eloquent speech is the ear ornament of the fortunate. Your beautiful bodies are ablaze with the glory of renown. I prostrate to you, whom to see, to hear, and remember so meaningful. Pleasing water offerings, various flowers, sweet-smelling incense, lights, scented water, and so forth, a vast cloud of offerings both set out and imagined, I offer to you supreme field of merit. Whatever non-virtues of body, speech, and mind have accumulated in time without beginning, especially transgressions of my three levels of vows, with great remorse I declare each one from the depths of my heart. In this degenerate age, you sow for much learning and accomplishment. Banning the 8 worldly concerns, you made your leisure and endowment meaningful. Protector from the very depths of my heart, I rejoice in the great wave of your deeds. From the billowing clouds of wisdom and compassion, the space of your enlightened minds, venerable guru and holy gurus, please send down a rain of vast, profound dharma appropriate to the disciples of this world. May your Vajra body, created from the period of clear light, free the rising setting of cyclic existence, but visible to the ordinary viewer only in its unsubtle physical form, stay on unchanging without waiting until samsara ends. Through the virtues I've accumulated here, may the teachings and all living beings receive every benefit, especially may the essence of the teaching of Lama Je Tsongkhapa shine forever. Short mandala offering here, visualizing a purified universe at our hearts and offering up to the merit field. This mandala is built on a base resplendent with flowers, saffron, water, and incense, adorned with Mount Meru, four-land sun, and full moon. By offering this pure mandala to you, assembly of Buddhas are here, visualized here before me. May all living beings experience pure happiness and be reborn in the Pure Lands. We send forth this jewel of mandala to you, precious gurus. Om Hiram Guru Rana Mandala Kamnirtiyami. So now, just after making that offering from the hearts of Je Tsongkhapa, Jabagasum Kejubji, and just from behind, just sort of on the other side, past the clouds there from Tashita Pure Land, from Maitreya and all the other Buddhas and holy beings there, we just visualize beautiful, like golden energy coming down, golden light, like sunlight. Just like when the clouds open, you have the sunbeams coming down onto a mountain or onto a lake. And just what it's like, especially in the springtime, if you've had a hard winter or so forth, and the sun comes out, you're sitting on a park bench, and you just have that nice, warm sun on your face. Makes you just feel so happy, and just opens your heart. Just feel Jinlap transforming your mind here with the blessing, sort of an energy transmission, sort of empowering you, bring your energy level up. And going from a reactive, sort of closed, sort of passive, kind of negative standpoint to being sort of an active, open, affirmative, happy, sharing standpoint. And we'll sing the Miksemi mantra. Mig me se wei che chen chen rei zi. Dri me kien pe wang po jam pao yang. Du pung ma lu jom se sang wei dan. Gan chen ke pe sun kien song ka pao. Lo sang tra pe sha bla so wa de. Mig me se wei che chen chen rei zi. Dri me kien pe wang po jam pao yang. Du pung ma lu jom se sang wei dan. Gan chen ke pe sun kien song ka pa. Lo sang tra pe sha bla so wa de. Mig me se wei te chen chen rei zi. Dri me kien pe wang po jam pao yang. Du pung ma lu jom se sang wei dan. Nan chen ke pe sun kien song ka pa. Lo sang tra pe sha bla so wa de. Okay, so doing the dissolution here. Glorious and precious Root Guru, please come to lotus and moon seat at my crown, and your great kindness please remain with me. Bestow upon me blessings of your body, speech, and mind. Glorious precious Root Guru, please ascend the lotus and moon seat at my heart, and your great kindness please remain with me. Please grant me the calm and supreme realizations. Precious Root Guru, please remain in the lotus and moon seat at my heart, and in your great kindness please remain with me. Please remain till I achieve the essence of enlightenment. So having said that, just making these prayers here, just feel that we have the dissolution process happening here, where the sheet of Pure Land starts melting into golden light. It dissolves into Maitreya. Maitreya becomes just like a big sun, golden energy. And sort of comes down, melting all the clouds, dissolving the Je Tsongkhapa. Chabagatsu and Kajupchi become golden light. Balls of golden light dissolve into Je Tsongkhapa. And now Je Tsongkhapa comes to the crown of our head. It gets really, really, really small. And at the same time, we can just look inside ourselves at our heart and see about the size of a dime, a little white 8-petaled lotus and a white moon disc on top. And just like a little helicopter slowly landing on a helicopter pad. Je Tsongkhapa enters our crown chakra, slowly descends to our heart, lands in the middle of the moon disc there, and then the lotus closes up at our heart to make almost like a little bud. And just feel that 2 golden mantras turn clockwise and counterclockwise, the Manjushri mantra and the Je Tsongkhapa mantra, Om Rapatsanadi and Om Agura Vajradhar Samadhakuri Siddhi Hum. They're slowly turning clockwise and counterclockwise. They're sealing it. And all that energy, Je Tsongkhapa, the 3 Buddhas of wisdom, compassion, and power. The Manjushri, Avalokiteshvara, and Vajrapani here. So just like all the Buddhas are sort of synthesized into him. And all these qualities and virtues and energies and powers go directly into us. We just feel sort of energized here, and open, spacious, luminous, happy. Okay. So, let's be on a meditation here. And we can just start our class this week. Okay. So just a few, in a lot of ways, this is just going to be a few opening remarks just for the nature and the scope of the book here. So what is this book designed to do? What is it? What's its intention? So on one level, it's looking at the Chittamatra Yogacara school, the mind-only school, and its understanding of emptiness. That's kind of like a technical description of what it's trying to do. But on a deeper level, what the Buddha truly intended, or what he truly meant, is what are we trying to do with Buddhism? What's it about? What's its real meaning? What's the take home, so to speak? If I had to, people at a party, cocktail party, okay, you're Buddhist, to sum it up, what's important? Tell me what's important, even try and convince me why I should care. So what that, in some ways, when you think about it, Je Tsongkhapa, like Atisha, had like 80 teachers. You have an incredible yogi and scholar, and who studied so many different teachings with so many different teachers. How do you take all these teachings and put them together and try and figure out what's most important? What's kind of the take home, or what's sort of the baseline for all of them? What are they trying to tell you? What, with Buddha teaching for 50 years of his life, all different teachings, all different people, what's Buddhism? What's it trying to do? What's its meaning? What's its effect on you in your life when you practice it? So it's a really, really profound text when you think about it. it's kind of like Buddhism for dummies, but in a lot of ways it's deeper than that, because again, it's trying to get at the real essence or kernel of Buddhism. What is it supposed to do to you if you practice it? Like William James always said, just as a pragmatist, if you practice a religion, like what's its truth value, in the sense like what does it do to you? Like you can sort of cash out the effects in terms of what kind of person do you become at the end of it, of practicing it. And it's the same thing here with Buddhism. If I'm Tibetan Buddhism in particular, Vajrayana Buddhism, what's its effect? What's its truth? What does it do to me? Who do I become in doing this? So it's just, when you think about it, extremely profound text to deal with this issue. So again, on one level is just, it's another book on emptiness, in particular, understanding the mind-only school's understanding of emptiness and karma, and how that leads to a deeper understanding of these things, and the Madhyamika Prasangika or middle way consequentialist school as a way of solving the technical issues or problems you end up having with the mind-only school, how that as a system has certain self-contradictions or flaws that don't work, that don't allow it to do what it's claiming it can do or what it wants to do. And then the solution, what is shown as the solution, is the middle way school, in particular middle way consequentialist school. That's the real meaning. But the deeper meaning is what, again, like I say, what's true? How do I know what Buddha is trying to tell me here? So it's kind of interesting that way. So when you look at it, I think in some ways, like when Je Tsongkhapa was writing all this in the 1300s, you had Buddhism having been in Tibet for about 500 years at that time. But you had a lot of different teachers, a lot of different lineages, and a lot of teachings that seem to contradict, self-contradict, be inconsistent, or be kind of mixed up. And at the time, people kind of didn't know how to sort through the stuff, how to categorize it, how to sort of like it's a lot of ways, it's kind of like losing the forest for the trees. And I think we're in a similar, almost in a lot of ways, an identical position right now in the 21st century, with so many different things on the internet, let's say, and social media, so many different religious traditions, so many religious and spiritual viewpoints, so many different kinds of Buddhism, so many different kinds of Buddhist teachers, and so forth. It's hard to know what's Buddhism, what's true. What's true about Buddhism? Is this particular Buddhist website or teacher, YouTube, even me, let's say, how do we know that this is true? How do we know that this works? How do we know that this is authentic Buddhism? What's authentic Buddhism? What's inauthentic Buddhism? All these things. So this book is going to give you a toolkit on how to discern these things, how to figure this out. That's what's so amazing about it, is that this is kind of like a medicine for you, a toolkit and an education to know what Buddha really meant. And it's fascinating when you get to the end of that, what that actually really means for Je Tsongkhapa. Like his answer to that is extremely profound and subtle and sublime, really. And that's the take home we'll see at the end of this course. So in a lot of ways, you can say it like after Buddha passed into parinirvana, and you had the three baskets of teachings, all the sutra teachings, all the Vinaya teachings on ethics and so forth, monastic rules, and all the Abhidharma teachings, Buddhist psychology and metaphysics, so to speak. Not that Buddhism has metaphysics really per se, but you have all these great students of Buddha and arhats and famous saints and so forth getting together and kind of codifying it as Buddhism, because Buddha didn't teach Buddhism, Buddha just made teachings, right? It wasn't a sort of an official religion or anything like that. So afterwards you have that. And then at later centuries after that, that was sort of the Theravada and Mahayana, the sort of Hinayana traditions. Later on, you have great saints prophesied by Buddha, Arya Nagajuda and Arya Sangha, coming about 500 years later and teaching great Mahayana or great scope teachings. And then shortly after that, the Vajrayana teachings, Diamond Vehicle teachings, 84 Mahasiddhas, all these great teachers, men and women, teaching the tantric or secret mantra paths. There's a lot of different forms of Buddhism there. So again, what's what's Buddhism in terms, like in terms of that context, what's common to all these things, what's true about all these things, what makes them Buddhist teachings, what makes them teachings from the Buddha. So in a lot of ways, you could divide it up in Buddhist life, and they did afterwards, into three kind of great periods, three turnings of the wheel of Dharma. And so this is the thing Je Tsongkhapa wants to look at in this book, that the first sort of series of teachings that Buddha gave upon reaching enlightenment, the more considered the more sort of basis of the Theravada tradition and so forth. He sort of more was called, the Hinayana, or sort of smaller view, more narrow view of the path, is what he taught at Sarnath to his first 5 students. And this is, the 4 Arya truths, the Eightfold Path, and so forth, 4 seals of Dharma that we're so familiar with, that constitute the bedrock or basis for what it means to be a Buddhist, what Buddhism is, the foundations of Buddhism. But what's interesting, Je Tsongkhapa says, is that at this period, Buddha is showing you what the things that do exist, what's really real, so to speak. Like if we're in a world of lies and illusion, what can I count on? What's real? What's true? Well, it's these teachings I'm giving right now. If I want to be liberated from ignorance and illusion and suffering, what's the antidote? What's the medicine? What's true? 4 Arya truths, Eightfold Path, and so forth, 4 seals of Dharma. Then later on, years later, at Rajgir, at Vulture's Peak, in Bihar State, he starts teaching the perfection of wisdom teachings, which are sort of the foundation, more Mahayana school, which is all the teachings on emptiness. So if the first turning of the wheel of Dharma is we're teaching about the non-self of dharmas which do exist, which are real, you're looking at the second turn in the wheel of Dharma, is that things do not exist the way we think they do. So rather than saying, this is what's true, this is exist, the things do exist, all of a sudden later on in his life, it's things don't exist. Everything is empty. You thought things are a certain way, they're not. You think things exist, they don't. So it's you're looking on one hand where he's establishing a view on one level with the first teachings at Sarnath, and then the second time period of his life, this whole new cycle of teachings he's giving, is it's a critical standpoint. We're saying about what things are not what things are, but what things are not. So instantly you get a bit of a paradox right here. Well, which one is it? Okay, well, hold on. A few years ago, you're telling us all these things exist. Now you're saying that they don't. What does the 4 noble truths don't exist? What's going on here? Then, or to make it even more complicated, at the end of his life at Vasali, he teaches what later sort of evolves into a lot of the more mind-only teachings on emptiness. So the first turn of the wheel of Dharma really corresponds to the first of the 2 of 4 schools on emptiness, the Vaibhashika Abhidharma school, and in a lot of ways the logicists, Trantika teachings, what they call the Sutra school, all the stuff that Dharmakirti and Dignaga do on logic and perception, sort of comes from that period. Then you have the middle way teachings are in the second turn of the wheel of Dharma at Rajgir. And then finally, the Yogacara mind-only school at the end of his life at Vasali. And that's what exists. Well, what exists is mind. In the last teachings. In other words, this is the final turn of the wheel of Dharma, where it's the interpretive teachings that some things exist, some things don't exist, some are sort of in the middle, right? So this is, in a lot of ways, seems to be the final teaching because it's qualifying the first 2 turnings of the wheel of Dharma. Okay, so then you've got final teaching, then Buddha passes into peri-nirvana. So you would think, well, that's just like going to school, like you do, math, and then you get into higher arithmetic, and then into calculus, and so forth. And then if you want to go to college, university, you can go deeper with that. So it just seems to be sort of a linear progression, or sort of a curve upwards as your knowledge deepens. But of course, it's not that simple. So what we'll see is that different Buddhist traditions and lineages start to argue with one another on what constitutes the real view of Buddhism. So if you look at more Theravada Buddhism, like in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, Burma, or Myanmar, Cambodia, and so forth, it's the first turn of the wheel of Dharma. That's what's true. That's what we count on. That's the foundation. That's what constitutes Buddhism. You've got different Mahayana schools, Pure Land schools, a lot of Vajrayana schools that say, no, it's the second turning wheel of Dharma. The teachings on emptiness. That's what's most important. Then you get some schools say, well, it's obvious it's the case because it's the last thing he taught before he died. That's got to be what's true. Why would he teach all this stuff for years and years? Then at the end of his life, so actually it's the stuff in Sarnath that's true. The last, ignore everything I said over the last 20 years. The other two, we're not going to do it. So they say, well, of course, it's the mind-only school. That stuff's what's important. Mind is luminous. That's the take home. Mind is empty. Mind is everything's a projection of your mind. That's the take home, the final teaching of Buddha. So you see there's an ambiguity here. Who's right? They're all right. Okay, they're all right, but then all three of them kind of contradict one another, right? Things exist, things don't exist, things kind of exist. Okay, well, which one is it, right? It's a good question. And the thing is because Buddha didn't write anything down, didn't do books, and taught relatively based on his audience or what people needed, like as a doctor giving different medicine for different ailments, he never said which one was true. So you have to figure it out yourself with your teachers and with the material. That's really, really difficult. So Je Tsongkhapa's book is the key or the toolbox to help you do that. That's what he's looking at. Which of these three turnings of the wheel of Dharma is the one to say is the one that's true, the one that we actually use to inform our practices, our personal view as a Buddhist, right? So that's where this is actually coming from as a text. So, yeah. And again, this is important because really in a lot of ways, we're looking at the truth of if the main sort of teaching in Buddhism is emptiness or non-self, or selflessness, this is what stops all your suffering. This is the cure to illusion and error. This is what stops all pain in your life. So it's actually really important. This is getting the right medicine. If the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma are different medicine, you've got a headache or whatever, diarrhea or something, I go to the, let's say like I am, where I go to, like I'm here in Japan, I go to the drugstore for something. Everything's in Japanese, thank goodness for Google Translate on my phone. But how do I know what medicine to pick? I can't read any of it. I see the little pictures or the colors of the boxes, but I don't know what things do. So I have to translate. And sometimes what's funny is I'm looking for something like Mui, like let's say the little ointment for when you get a bug bite. Certain things look like that box with the color, but I'm like, well, which one is it? Like which part of the thing? And okay, no one speaks English here. How can I get the medicine that I need? And it's important medicine. Like if I just get the wrong box, I could really injure myself and poison myself, or it just won't work. So it's the same thing here with Buddhism, trying to figure out what's really true, and that your whole enlightenment or whole therapeutic liberation depends on getting this right. So it's actually a really, really important thing. So yeah. Okay, so basically we'll see that in this book, I just want to note here, the source of the mind-only school is the Sutra and True Intent, where the Bodhisattva, Dunda, Yandrak, Pak asks the Buddha, which of the three turns of the wheel of Dharma is true? So again, we're going to go back to, Je Tsongkhapa is going to look at this text, this sutra, that constitutes sort of the main teachings that are really extrapolated upon by great mind-only school scholars and saints like Arya Sangha and Vasubandhu, looking at how the mind-only school's view of emptiness will lead to sort of the final view, helps you understand the final view of Prasangika to really get clear which of the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma is correct. And again, correct in terms of how we see it as Galupas, because the whole point is like even in Tibetan Buddhism, if you're in the Nyingma tradition, let's say Kargi Nyingma tradition, they say the third turning of the wheel is correct. We'll see in our view, in the Galupa view, that it's the second turning of the wheel that is definitive. But that's not obvious, and it's in some ways counterintuitive. But this is Je Tsongkhapa's counterintuitive claim, kind of like the Freudian counterintuitive reversal that you get in psychoanalysis, you'll see why that is the more profound way of looking at it. That's our brand. Of course, if you go to other Tibetan Buddhist schools, they'll give you a different answer, even other Buddhist schools. But in terms of the Gelugpa position, we'll show why this is the case. Okay, so just a few notes, again, to sort of bring up our sort of mind, our logical mind. Just to get started on the tools we want to use is understanding what the difference is, just quickly before we end here, between what's figurative and what's literal. So what the Buddha really meant in terms of this essence True Eloquence is a study of how to interpret what the Buddha really meant. In other words, the difference between what's a figurative interpretation and what is literal. Okay, so what's figurative, what's literal. In other words, what's in needing of interpretation or translation on some level, and what's intended to be taken as such, or what's something that's obviously true where it doesn't need to be interpreted in a different way. It's just clear. So there's three meanings of literal versus figurative here. Number one is by expressions. So an expression or, let's say a proposition or sentence here, if we're speaking literally, then the words in the intended meaning match each other. If it's figurative, they do not. Okay, so it's a question of whether things correspond to the real meaning of something or they don't. And again, there's a lot of philosophy in a lot of ways. Jacques Derrida's whole deconstruction work is an examining precisely of that when we think we're being literal, we're actually being figurative, right? That's another question. Maybe I can talk a little bit about that in a certain part of this course here if we want to. Second is in terms of reality. What's literal and what's figurative in terms of how things appear to us. Does the way an object appear to us and the way it is match? Okay. Figurative reality is where the object is lying to you or appearing in a way that's different from the way it really is. This is deceptive reality, and we'll see in Buddhism that constitutes conventional reality, or basically everything around us. Okay, so we can see that in the sense of, an example of like the bent stick in the water, or an optical illusion, like you're driving on a hot summer day and you've got a mirage on the highway. It looks like you're going to drive through a puddle or something. The way it appears is not the way it actually is. Okay. And then finally, in terms of our understanding, and this refers to two states of mind, okay, which is the difference between valid perception and approximate understanding. So valid perception is on a level of literal perceptions, meaning that your understanding is valid by the way it matches the way things really exist. Okay, so that's the idea of valid. Is it a correct perception or correct understanding, right? And most things, at least in terms of a Prasangika view, are valid perceptions. When I'm seeing an object and interacting with it on a worldly level or a conventional level, then it, just got to move the camera here a little bit. I think there's too much light coming in. Okay, one sec. So it, what's a valid, this is a difference, let's say, we'll see in sort of Buddhist logic when you look at the Sautrantika school. Their terms of valid perception is that what's valid is your initial contact with something, because a moment later it's changed, and all you've got is a representation that's not valid anymore. And so the only way of actually getting a valid perception of something is to be in meditation. But our day-to-day life, the way we talk and think about things, there is it's almost like Derrida's deconstruction, or a question of tracking or fitting, right, in the sense that our perceptions or concepts don't match reality, because we have a picture of something, and the thing it's a picture of has already changed. It's no longer accurate. It's no longer representational. That's a big part of the Sautrantika school around emptiness, is understanding that disjunction between reality and our concepts of it. But from a higher view, the Madhyamika school, they basically say valid perceptions are valid in terms of our everyday context, and they're fine because they work, right? We can talk about, a book, or get me a cup of coffee, or this or that. That's all valid. It's not truly existing. It's changing. It's a figment of our minds. But in terms of consensual reality, in terms of almost like a game, a consensus, or what William James calls like double counting, in the sense that we've all agreed to behave in a certain way, to call certain things by certain names, to act in terms of certain rules. Now, are those rules, are they founded in any way? Absolutely not, but that's why they work. right? So that would be the idea of valid perception on more of a higher understanding of it. So that's valid perception. Then approximate understanding is the figurative meaning that your understanding only roughly matches how things are. So we'll see, you can see on the Satrantika level, how can we understand a constantly changing object? It's sort of, we understand that figuratively. And what we're looking at a higher level is how do we understand the emptiness of conventional things? Again, everything on that level is figurative because everything's just a convention or a set agreed upon rule, right? So you can see understanding, there's a difference between what's literal and what's figurative there as well. And now, just to conclude, this is everybody's favorite part about Buddhism. A lot of people like this about Buddha, is how do we decide what the Buddha really meant? So when we're actually, what's the big tool or attitude that we have? Like I say, the toolbox or the education we have to deciding what's real and what's figurative. Well, Buddha said, the famous quote everyone likes to quote, don't just believe what I teach, treat it like gold, melt it, cut it, and rub it. In other words, examine, test if they're worthy to be followed. So back in the old days, well, just the same now. Everyone's into buying gold, I guess, because everyone thinks it's the end of the world. But in the old days, buying gold, make sure you don't just buy a painted rock or a piece of, that fool's gold or whatever, a fake gold. So you pay all this money at the marketplace and you get home and someone says, oh, dude, just like I always say, like, I love buying jade. I love jade. Most jade now is plastic or fake or colored. So when I'm in Hong Kong, all the jade stuff, oh, real jade. And I look at it and just like, oh, I know about this. How do I know? Like if I want to buy a jade pendant, that it's real jade? Because the plastic stuff now, so in the old days, like when I used to look at jade, let's say whatever 25 30 years ago, you could really tell. Like let's say when I started going to Hong Kong and the jade markets, let's say 2001, plastic jade was very much plastic jade. It was almost like something like a little kid's costume jewelry, like like being the very princess with a little jade pendant. You could tell it was really plastic. And the stuff now, the fake stuff, is so good, or the colored stuff looks so good. The enhanced inject coloring, that it looks like real jade. But it's not real jade, it's fake. So how do I know? Well, if it's fake plastic jade, do I want to pay $1,000 for this pendant, or is it really, well, no, I'm going to haggle and kind of haggle it down and pay something that I really think it's worth. Like maybe it's only worth $100 or something like that. So Buddha says the same thing. We have to do this. That famous Bon Lama that I really like, Geshe Wang, he always said that Western people with spirituality are way less discerning than they are when they're shopping online. Right, which I think is so true. He was saying if you're trying to get to interview a potential roommate, you want to do a credit check, talk to the person, meet them, see if because you're going to be stuck with them living in your same house. You don't want a scammer or a crazy person, someone who's not going to pay rent. Just like when you're buying something online, buying clothes, something off eBay, something, I don't know what they are now, but in the old days it was Craigslist or something. Say you want to buy a car or whatever, Facebook Marketplace. Hey, I want to come and check it out. I don't want to just buy it like, oh yeah, just give me all this money in PayPal or an e-transfer or something like that. Say, hey, hold on, man. I want to try this on. Like at least with online clothing, I can return on Amazon. But let's say you couldn't return it. You're just buying like a suit jacket. I want to see how it looks on me. Does it fit? Is it flattering? The car, I want to see if it works. Any of these things, tools, I want to make sure that they're not broken. So Buddha says basically with spirituality or religion or his teachings, treat it in exactly the same way, pragmatically. Check it out with empiricism and pragmatism here. Do all the tests. So the three things Buddha always says that you have to, a lot like Jacques Lacan always says, it's the real, symbolic, and the imaginary. You triangulate those three things in Freudian psychoanalysis to actually help people. So in other words, it's not just your own self-image, it's not just the social register or sort of social structures that we're in. It's not just the reality that we can't face or don't want to face or don't know about. It's how all these three things interact that gives you the quote unquote therapeutic truth. It's the same thing here. These three things, using your experience, using your knowledge of Buddhist texts in the tradition, and using your reason or logic. And again, there's limits. Just like in Christianity, Thomas Aquinas always says that faith's always more important than reason or logic. In other words, it takes you to a certain point. You need both, but at a certain point, you see the limits of rationality and you go into faith. Now, that's a very Christian answer, but it's a little similar here, especially when we go into Tantra. You have to use confidence or faith, but it's a confidence or faith that's founded on this triangulation of using these three tools to always help you determine what's true. And what's true for you spiritually is, let me check the texts. What did Buddha say? Let me look at the Kangyur and Tengyur. In other words, the sutras that Buddha spoke and the commentaries that are accepted to be authoritative commentaries by famous saints of the past. There are commentaries on it. And their commentaries oftentimes contradict or self-contradict, but I have the whole corpus. So it's like peer review and academics, right? I have to have all my references and all my footnotes, and people have to be able to check that. So it's the same thing here. Buddha's saying, okay, I'm teaching this, and I got Nagarjuna and a Sangha here commenting on that. So what you can say is, okay, thank you very much, Buddha, great. Let me check the text. Let me hear the recording. Let me hear what you said. And let me check the footnotes. Let me check the references. Let me check what Nagarjuna and Sangha are giving commentary on, and let me check even what people comment on their commentary. So you have to have a very open scholarly mind here. And who's saying this? It's not like I'm being cynical and saying this. Buddha himself said this. Don't take my word for it. Here's the teachings, check it out. Second thing, use your reason. If something's illogical or again, unreasonable, if it's inconsistent, if it's contradictory, that has to be factored in here, right? And again, pragmatically, what's the result? How can we test it? How can we quantify or qualify it? What's the cash value? I mean, I'm very much interested in like American pragmatism. This is always the big dispute, between Charles Sanders Peirce and William James on just the nature of what does it mean to test something. Peirce always said, pragmatically, we have to use science to test the validity of statements. Now, in other words, use science to test it. William James is like, well, it's a bit bigger than science because, we can't use science, let's say, in the arts. So we're going to look at a sort of a wider understanding of truth. But the whole point is, William James said always, let's test things. Let's examine the effects, the consequences of things. So it's the same thing here with your reason. Use it, test it in your own life, see the effects it generates, see if it's consistent. And again, what do? We ask for accountability from the teachings. In other words, provide an account. You ask your teachers, you ask the Buddha, you ask the saints. This is self-contradictory, this part on emptiness. Why? Why is it? It doesn't make sense. Or you said this here, you said this here later. What's going on? Or I'm listening to the teachings, this doesn't make sense. This isn't reasonable. That you're asking something unreasonable of me, or this is a contradiction, this is an inconsistency, right? Use your head, use your reason. And that's why Buddhism, I think, it's an amazing religion that it has about this, but it's not just an empty rationale or logicism, because it's a balanced one. And then the final one is your experience. Test it and see what it is in your own personal experience. So this is why Buddhism isn't a science. I always argue science since Descartes is about quantifying experience mathematically in terms of statistics, right? So Buddhism, Buddhism, brain science, Buddhism science, it's not a science because we can't experimentally quantify it mathematically. So we're not looking for that kind of mathematical proof. It's more like an art or a social tradition, like a cooking school or a style of literature or a style of therapy, a style of healing, let's say, a style of dance, in the sense that we're getting common outcomes working within a tradition, within a context, but at the same time, things get cashed out individually. So there's variations depending on personal style. So this is what's good in a lot of ways. We can, as Buddhists, there's we're all practicing together. Sangha is the third Dharma jewel. So we've got like a result that we're going for. It's not like we're all coming up with our own forms of Buddhism. There is a result, you're going to get enlightened, but nevertheless, almost on a Jungian level, you're on an individual path to that. And there are variations in that. So, which means your own experience is authoritative in the context of this path with your teachers and with the material. So you have to check that. So if everyone's saying, oh, we're all getting the same result and you're not, rather than dismissing your experience, you have to see the validity of that and say, okay, Buddha, this isn't working for me. I don't agree with this. I don't like it. I don't like the effect. Why is that? Let's kind of debate this. This didn't work for me. Right? So Buddha said that it's sort of like testing gold. You melt it, you cut it, or you rub it. So in other words, I melt it. Oh, it does melt. If it's not melting, it's not gold. I cut it. I can see that it's soft. It's not hard. I can't cut it. That's not gold. And then rub it. Make sure that the gold paint doesn't come off if it's fake, right? So melting is a testing against your direct experience. How do I apply this in my life? What effects or results do I get? Does it work for me? Cut it. Test it against your own logical analysis, whether Buddha's words are really consistent, are internally consistent. Are they consistent? Are they self-contradictory? Are they paradoxical? What's that? It's not just a question of just believe me because I say so, or sort of what they call false appeal to authority. I'm Buddha, I'm right, I'm special, I'm magic. You have to believe what I say, don't question me, right? And then rub it means do his words contradict an authority? You have reasonable you reasonably believe to be speaking the truth. Do the words of scripture contradict what you believe from their authoritative source? So in a lot of ways, this is good in the sense you're not just testing the words in terms of not just testing Buddhist sources just against themselves, which you should do. All of Buddha's teachings and the commentaries, you read them all against each other, right? And then the truth comes through the conflict of opinions. What's left out? What agrees with one another? This or that. But actually, technically, from Buddhist point of view, test it against other things too. Does this contradict, let's say, Western science? Does this contradict agreed upon things of history? Let's say philosophy, psychology. Like there's authoritative stuff we can look at and test it against that too. So Buddha says, well, there's no such thing as evolution. Like, we one day there was a monkey, next day was a person. You have to believe that, let's say something, or that we never descended. There's no such thing as evolution. You think, okay, let me test that against Darwinian evolution, modern science here. What should I believe? What's more reasonable? Is Buddha speaking figuratively, metaphorically, or just kind of like a parable there? Like when he talks about the Ochakata stories, is that speaking figuratively? Oh, I was a tiger in my last life. I saved all these people or something like that. What's the point? In other words, you can see at each point you're using your head. So this is wonderful. So this is what I love is that this is the start of the book. This is the critical thing. So, Je Tsongkhapa is a real philosopher here in the sense of being really, really open-minded and critical with his own tradition. In the same way you get even with St. Augustine, St. Thomas Aquinas in sort of the Christian tradition. But that's what he's asking you to be in your own life, that basically Buddhism will only work it will only do what it's supposed to do for you if you have this attitude. And really, when you think about it, Buddhism's about it's therapeutic and pragmatic about solving your suffering, but really it solves your suffering or liberates you from suffering because it's telling you the truth. It's telling you the truth. I remember Melvin MacLeod, that one guy, that editor of Strong Bliss Son, said, what I believed about Buddhism, what I liked about it was the only religion or spiritual or philosophical school that told me what I didn't want to hear, which I think is awesome. Like, sense that it's telling you the truth. So in the end, even though it's a therapeutic model and a pragmatic model based on therapy, but it's about personal liberation from suffering, like all the great Indian philosophies. but it's not just using a medicine or a drug to get you over. How are you being liberated? By finding out the truth, by finding Buddhists telling you the truth, and you realize that truth yourself in your own life, which is why it's like the Buddha of Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom. This is a wisdom, the perfection of wisdom. Buddha is the ultimate scholar, philosopher, as Je Tsongkhapa calls. He's telling you the truth, and he's pointing the way, pointing the finger to the moon. You have to see it. And it's that truth that saves you. The truth liberates you. The truth heals you. That's the point. That's the true eloquence of Buddha's words. Okay, there we go. So all ready to start into the deep material here. So let's take a moment to dedicate this by the blessings of all holy beings, truth of karma, the power of pure spirit intention. May all of our dharma wishes be fulfilled. May all of our study here, again, be towards liberating us and all sentient beings from their sufferings and seeing the truth of our condition. Okay, lots of love, and we'll see you next time.